One of the goals of the Planning for a Diverse and Equitable Future video series is to discuss topics that impact our profession and offer practical recommendations to improve the future. Diversifying the law profession, opening the aperture, expands our understanding of the law and clients' needs. Mentoring a person from a different background and helping them navigate the complex process of becoming valued lawyers is one way to improve the profession. As women and persons of color, ACTEC fellows Sandra Chan and Stephanie Perry have worked hard to prove themselves in a profession where few people looked like them. They join us today for National Mentoring Month to share their experience and offer recommendations to both young and experienced lawyers on the value of mentoring.
When Stephanie and I were preparing for this video, her story about how she discovered the trust and estates practice sounded much more compelling than mine. So I thought she should tell you about her experience first.
Sandra, I'm not sure about much more compelling, but I'm happy to go first. I was introduced to trust and estates law as a law student. And when I started law school, I had no idea what trust and estates was. It wasn't until my second year of law school, when I took an estates and trust course, that I was introduced to the area. And my professor, Jeff Pennell, who is also an ACTEC fellow, was incredibly compelling. He could have been teaching anything, and that's probably what I would be practicing today. Thankfully, it was estates and trust. He actually ended up being a mentor to me. And after taking his course, he introduced me to the probate court judge in Atlanta at that time, and she hired me for a clerkship. I was with her my second year, summer, and throughout my third year. And that's how it started for me. I haven't looked back since. Sandra, how did you discover the trust and estates practice?
2 words, Stephanie: serendipity and timidity. I remember that I wanted to join the tax department of my firm, but there were other first-year associates competing for the position. The only other related option was a slot in the trust and estates department. I remember the position was not desirable among the first years because the department was located 1 floor below my firm's main floor. Even in my first weeks of practice, all the first years knew that if you wanted to interact with power partners in the firm, you had to be on the firm's main floor. Anyway, not having to compete for the trust and estate slot suited my personality, and I joined that department. I vividly remember that those 4th floor offices seemed to be darker and danker than the 5th floor offices. Nonetheless, it turned out to be an area of practice that satisfied all my professional desires. Trust and estates law was intellectually stimulating, gave me a lot of client contact, and gave me the gratification of helping individuals solve their problems.
Sandra, what impact did mentors make on your career?
Although the 4th floor of my firm was not as lively as the 5th floor, I decided to stick with the trust and estates practice because of 2 people, my mentors. One was an associate who was just a couple of years ahead of me, and the other was a practitioner who entered the legal profession after retiring from a successful accounting practice. My associate mentor was invaluable in training me in the nuts and bolts of the practice. That training did not involve law per se. She took me to the huge cavern of the Los Angeles County Courthouse and showed me where the probate attorney's office was, where to get certified copies of documents, how to find documents that had been filed with the court but had not yet made it to the court files, how to navigate the court's archives, where the offices of the legal notice publishers were, and where the offices of the bonding companies were. She also introduced me to all the court clerks she knew. These introductions served me well throughout my years of practice. My associate mentor was also an excellent writer and generously and patiently shared those skills with me. Now, I'm not sure why my senior mentor chose me, but I became a beneficiary of his then unique ideas about drafting, communicating, and packaging estate planning documents for clients. Those were the days before computers. Estate planning documents had to be produced almost from whole cloth for each client. My mentor introduced the concept of having pre-printed sections of standard provisions to reduce document preparation and time and to reduce errors. He also helped me develop pre-printed forms for consistent and accurate data collection and pre-printed diagrams of estate plans that I use to explain the contents of complicated trust documents to clients. I still wonder why my white male mentor thought I, as a then young Asian woman, would be an effective emissary of his ideas, but he adopted me wholeheartedly and paved the way for my becoming an ACTEC fellow and a member of the planning committee of the USC Trust and Estates Conference. Without either of these mentors, I do not believe I would have been able to enjoy the practice I had. Stephanie, what impact did mentors make on your path?
Like you, Sandra, my practice would not be where it is today without my mentors. From Jeff Pinnell, who I mentioned earlier, who introduced me to estates and trust law, to the senior associate who taught me how to be a diligent and detailed drafter, to my deceased mentor and ACTEC fellow, Nancy Fax, who ensured that I too was on the path to becoming an ACTEC fellow, and many, many more in between. They all have had a tremendous impact on me and my practice, and I am truly grateful that I happened upon others in my career who were willing to share their time and talent to help me along. Sandra, have you had any experience with affinity bars?
Well, networking and getting involved with the bar were things both my mentors encouraged. My associate mentor encouraged me to be a Los Angeles County bar delegate to the State Bar Conference of Delegates. The House of Delegates was the place where new laws were introduced, discussed, and debated for later communication to representatives of the state legislature. My older mentor encouraged me to become an active member of the executive committee of the Trust and Estates section of the California Lawyers Association. I also became involved with the Southern California Chinese Lawyers Association and the Asian Business League of Southern California. In each of these organizations, I tried to be an active participant. For example, I became the editor of the California Trust and Estates Quarterly and served as the first woman president of the Chinese Lawyers Association and of the Asian Business League. Although being active took an enormous amount of time, I got out of each association as much, if not more, than what I put in. Besides lifelong friendships, I also received a lot of substantive benefits. The editor position gave me the opportunity to learn in depth about all kinds of planning and administration issues and ideas. The Asian Business League put on monthly programs about various business issues, so I learned a lot about entrepreneurship, finance, and management. And as an active participant in the Chinese Lawyers Association, I developed a reputation in the local Chinese community as an expert in the trust and estates field. It also gave me an opportunity to educate parts of the local Chinese community, not only about the benefits of estate planning, but also about the value of having legal assistance from time to time. Finally, the exposure to communities not familiar with trust and estates lingo allowed me to hone my communication skills about our practice area. Stephanie, what was your experience like?
Well, it's interesting with affinity bars. There's only so much time in a day. And as a young lawyer, I found that I had to pick and choose between affinity bars and other state and local bar organizations. We know that African Americans are underrepresented in the estates and trust practice. And I found earlier on in my practice that if I wanted to be involved in estates and trust, there wasn't much of an opportunity for me to do that through affinity bars. One shouldn't have to pick and choose, and we are working to improve this, but that was my experience. And of course, I made the most of networking with others where there was maybe less of a similarity, because while maybe it's sometimes more comfortable to network with others with whom there's some affinity, you just don't always have that option. Sandra, have you mentored young lawyers?
Although I haven't served in a formal mentorship position, I have tried to be available to young practitioners on an individual basis. That includes having periodic meals with younger lawyers and keeping active in a few bar associations where I can interact with them. I remember how important it was to me to see somebody who looked like me in places where I hope to be in the future. I also remember how it felt to be the only one in the room who looked like me. Hopefully, I can now be that familiar face to younger practitioners and let them know that there are others like you in the room and that those others are cheering for you. Stephanie, tell us about your experience.
Well, like you, Sandra, I have not ever served in a formal mentor role, but serving as a mentor for younger attorneys, especially those within my law firm, has always been important to me. As attorneys, I feel we have an obligation to the profession to help bring others along the same way that someone like me did for us. Also, I couldn't agree more with what you said, Sandra, about being present and visible, especially as a minority attorney. Sometimes just showing up and being a welcoming face and offering conversation to someone who knows no one else in the room means a lot to the attorney on the receiving end. Sandra, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, looking back, my bar activities and networking activities were activities that allowed me to expand and hone my skills as a lawyer. Our roles as counselors require us to have a breadth of knowledge about what is going on in the world and in our clients' communities. Interaction with various groups, especially those outside our area of practice, helps add to that breadth of knowledge. I didn't consider these activities as business development opportunities. My business development strategy was what my senior mentor taught me. That is, the way to your next matter is the matter on your desk. In other words, I was taught and strove to serve my clients to the best of my ability. I found that having a satisfied client was the best way to get the next matter or the next client. Although this strategy seems limited in light of all the platforms that are now available to advertise our skills, the trust and estates practice is one where individual interaction and attention is still appreciated and valued.
Absolutely. Well said, Sandra. My final thoughts to potential mentors: mentoring, even in a small way, can have a huge impact. And I encourage you to think of ways that you can help bring others along. To mentees, step out of your comfort zone. Find ways to network in meaningful ways. You never know when you'll meet someone who could impact the course of your practice. We're going to leave you with websites for 3 National Affinity Bar Associations as resources: Asian and Asian Pacific Islander lawyers at napaba.org, Black lawyers at nationalbar.org, and Hispanic lawyers at hnba.com. Thank you so much for joining us today.
If you're a law student, a young lawyer, or simply new to this practice area, there are many resources available online that didn't exist when I was younger to begin your journey of finding a mentor. And to experienced attorneys, please take the time to share your knowledge with a person from a diverse background. Mentoring yields benefits to the mentor as well as the protege, as it helps forge the bond between the experiences of those who came before and the hopeful spirit and energy of youth. Please visit actech.org/diversity for more information on this topic. And make sure you subscribe to ACTEC's YouTube channel to be informed of new videos as they become available.